the whole, like, okay, this is the office hour for Oregon State University PDC-PRO, winter 23. This is call number 9, and the next lesson due is assignment 9 on May 22nd. My little blurb. It's nice to just have a text that I just read. But yeah, they just, when just speaking to that kind of that weight of the decision making, it is true that when it's your own, I mean, that's I think the importance of, as a permaculture designer or practitioner, if you're going to install for other people, having your own play space, even if it's only like a quarter acre, a backyard, you know, some area where you can get more comfortable with mistakes and just like, and how not bad they are. You know, like, I don't know the number of trees that have gone in and come out and, you know, died, like not made it, or, oh, that was a surprise how well something did. And what we're finding now is, of course, you know, the trees that are proliferating are the ones that are like, for whatever reason, they're not fruiting. They're not, you know, we've got a beautiful olive and we've got a couple of beautiful pomegranates. And we're like, yeah, and you got to start paying your way around here because there's not a lot of space. So, but yeah, then when you're doing it on a client's property, you know, you do have to keep that in mind, but also I think it's a lot of a client education piece of understanding that these are like dynamic systems. And when you're not just dumping a bunch of fertilizer on and you keeping, when you're playing with more elements, it can turn out a lot better, and you'll have your failures. So just understanding what you're going to do ahead of those. Like a lot of nurseries, bigger nurseries anyway, at least they will offer some kind of a guarantee on their trees, like, you know, a year or two. So not always, but I mean, as long as you're honest with clients about where you are in your journey, and like, you know, you're learning, and this is, and not doing things for free, because that will sink you and burn you out very, very quickly, and you will become, and they won't take it seriously. Right. So, but there's definitely a sweet spot between, like, you know, oh, I'm just learning, so I'm going to charge less, and actually understand, you know, where you can actually start getting results for people. Good morning, Mark and Damien.
Morning.
Nice to see your faces.
You too.
Good morning. Yep.
Good morning. Mark, I did see your question in the Google Doc regarding.
Yeah, I just threw that up right now.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for putting the question in the doc. I am totally fine with that, with using AI tools, as long as those sources are cited, that, you know, that when you're getting the sources back, that it's clear where that came from.
Okay. It's cool. It was telling me like the exact pages, like, and the block quoting it. And I was like, well, I can't get that book. It's not, you know, the history of the Toronto peoples. It's not at Amazon, you know, so.
Yeah. And it, you know, you would go through, I mean, all your children's college funds buying books to, you know, just to get those individual pieces. I mean, there's some really good like core texts that I think are worth having on your bookshelf to be able to pull off, but, you know, based on where you are and what your goals are and stuff. But yeah, I'm fine with that. The one thing that I would caution against is like quoting blocks of text. So just get the information and reword it, like put it into your own words. Yeah, because that's, I mean, that's where really people run into like these gray areas of, you know, plagiarism and academic honesty and stuff of like, yes, you quoted the whole block, but you didn't need to. You could have just pulled the relevant information out and reworded it. So, and it also often adds unnecessary text, which just, especially in like a presentation format, like what you'd be doing, what you're doing here, what you'd be doing for a client, it winds up just making it way more text heavy than it needs to be, then, you know, then it's really helpful. So.
Is there do you know of like a resource online that has like permaculture specific ebooks and things like that? Like there's Project Gutenberg for, you know, literature and stuff, but. Yeah,
I'm working on it. I have a scientific database that has like a lot of papers in it. So that's under a subscription. That's the pharmacologist, which I've kind of let lapse a little bit, just because I just haven't like put the energy back into it. But now with AI, I'm starting to like revive it and just do like some quick paper summaries, like trying to get at least 2 a month out. So I'm happy to sign you guys up to that if you're interested. We'll do like, 6 months free or something like that. I think it's like I'm going to do the $5, keep doing $5 a month. So you get a time, what you do is you get like a bunch of papers, and it's not like these are all the papers on permaculture. These are all the, resources, but it's a really good start, and I try to point people in the right directions. And then whenever I can, I get like discount codes to like courses, or, like heads up on little things that are coming up, because that as that comes across my radar. An actual reading list, the Permies.com. So Paul Wheaton's group is really, it's kind of a treasure. It's kind of like a food forest of information. Sometimes you can find what you need, and sometimes you're just wading through the mess. But there's a lot of resources, and there's a lot of very experienced, knowledgeable people in there. So you kind of get to know who you follow. Good morning. Actual book lists. I recommend the Agrarians group to just about everyone that's anything over like an acre or two. I'm just making some notes in the doc here. But they are a subscription model, so you can get different tiers. Their lowest tier is $10 a month, and you still get a pretty significant library of like files and resources. I think you get a discount on the Agrarian's Handbook, which is really going to be, once he's finished it, I think they're at chapter 8 of 10. It's basically like the foundational field guide for everything from like fencing, irrigation, mapping. It's pretty, maybe I'll pull a PDF up here of one of the chapters and you can see. So that's Darren Doherty's ecosystem.
Is that, would you say, better than the permaculture handbook? Because I know there's floating around for $100, $200 on Amazon and stuff, but. Well,
so the Permaculture Designer's Manual, I think, is worth everyone having on their bookshelf. And it's not an insignificant outlay, but you can find them used for usually more like $50. I think, unless everything's gone up that much. Chelsea Green Publishing has a really extensive library of books. Let me see, but off the top of my head, Edible Forest Gardens is Tinsmeyer. Just like, and that's a 2-volume set. Toby Hemingway's Gaia's Garden. And I'm thinking specifically for your site too. Like, there's some really good work, like Mark Shepard's book, Restoration Agriculture, is also good. I'm cautious about I don't use his keyline approach. I'm going to say keyline. He's tweaked it a bunch, and I just go with Darren Doherty's work, because he has really followed. It's like very pure keyline geography, keyline design. He worked with the Yeomans family to like make sure that was very accurate to what P.A. Yeomans designed as an engineer and a geologist, I believe it was. Because P.A. Yeomans was very, very thorough about the research he did and the work that he did. And my understanding of the approach that Mark Shepard took with it is kind of to tweak it to fix problems that weren't really there. I don't really want to say too much more about it because I haven't read his book, but I just really stick with Darren Doherty's approach on it, because I know that he's really he's done a lot of due diligence to like keep that very clean, very accurate.
You're putting that in the class notes?
I am. I'm putting it in the document here. Let me see. I'm actually going to put that in my notes that I recommend, you guys pull it up when you get on the call, because then you can see us kind of real time as we go. Mark Krawczyk is a good friend. He just put out a really nice book called Coppice Agroforestry, which is Mark is Vermont, but he's so it might be a little more temperate zone, a little more
I actually think I
rainfall
bought that
oriented.
book. I think it was on the OSU website, like a blurb about that.
Yeah.
And I pre-ordered it.
Yeah, it's a very good book. It's very thorough. And Mark is kind of becoming like the expert on like small polewood coppice agroforestry, which I think is very, very relevant for like a semi-arid environment, because it's really keeping living tree roots in the ground and learning how to manage the tree above ground, so that you've got like, a tree forage. If you've got animals, you can start doing like craft wood. Like when I interned with Mark in 2013, and I remember him telling me that he said the most lucrative income stream that he had at the time was selling like little sticks of wood from different types of trees to crafters. It's like selling cosmetics, right? Like your value add on that product is so high that like that was where his main income was. And I don't want to say his main income, but his most like I guess profitable would be the best. Regenerative farming.
And slightly on that topic, I noticed at the north end of my property, there was a bunch of trees that were dormant when I didn't really know what they were, how to find them out, but I found out since they are the tree of heaven that a lot of people have problems with. But is there permaculture uses? I was actually thinking kind of like coppicing, or at least use the sticks for something, but they say it's just smelly and it's grows like nothing else. It's yeah.
Tree of heaven, is that going to be, oh, that's not ginkgo. Oh, stinking sumac.
It was that tree, I think, that Andrew made a video once of that Arizona town where the guy, like the mayor, flew over it and just dropped a bunch of seedlings, so it like stopped it from, it was like sinking or falling off a cliffside, but it actually together. But it's a really stinky tree or something. I don't know if the fruit is stinky, and so people hate it, but it like saved the town from falling or something.
Right. Well, I think. Right. Okay. So the main, so it's allelopathic, but it does very well in very, very poor soils. So, I mean, and that's often the things with the thing with those early pioneers. And it's funny because I remember at Permaculture Voices, somebody making the point that this kind of goes mega, or like very meta, but like even the people that are the pioneers in the permaculture movement are sort of like these invasive species. Like they grow in very hard, infertile, unwelcoming sites, but they're also like, they can be kind of nasty, or they can be kind of like crusty and hard, like harder to deal with. So I mean, that's going to be something that if you wanted to use it to like shore up a certain spot, but then make sure that would be fine, but then make sure you've got a plan for like dealing with that or phasing it out in a certain way. And a lot of times the issue with invasives is that the initial problem hasn't really been dealt with, right? Like poor soil issues, because a lot of plants that do very, very well in poor conditions actually suffer when you really get good soil, when you really get things cycling. Then they start to rot out a little bit. They're just like, they're not as happy. So it's not, I'm not going to say it's really easy to like, to overgrow that system, but often the problem that makes things invasives is not the invasives themselves. There's a root cause that's making conditions favorable to those coming in. And those are basically the only things that are going to grow well, do well in that space until something else comes in. So
if it's was it allopathic? That's where it doesn't.
Allelopathic.
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 Like, so does that won't work for like chop and drop because it'll just nothing will grow under it, or
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so I wouldn't do a chop and drop thing, but you could keep putting down putting down compost, putting down mulch, and it can kind of hold a site in place until you're ready to really work on it, right? And then you could just keep cutting those trees back until they're, until they're just they give up.
What do you do with, like, I assume you can compost them eventually, like put them in a pile long enough but like what, I don't know, what do you do with all this stuff?
I mean, for this, I want to say for this one specifically, I would really want to do some research on it before I said like, oh yeah, it'd be safe to compost, because not everything, most things will degrade in compost, even pretty recalcitrant pesticides. There's almost always some, when you get a bacterial system going for long enough, and especially like a bacterial fungal ratio going for long enough, most everything will break down. There's almost always something that will break it down. The issue is that you're probably not going to be running a compost long enough. Getting that diversity can be quite hard. Like I'm looking at like the genomics profiles of the genomic profiles I saw of the Johnson Sioux bioreactors, and the ones that were doing really well. He was finding strains of bacteria that were breaking down like PAHs, like the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, so like basically oil, breaking down like atrazine, definitely glyphosate, all of that stuff was getting broken down. But his system is a compost, it's a wet compost that you build into a tower. There's aeration within it, and then they put worms into it. So you've got all of this like fungal, bacterial material breakdown, like with the, the worms fostering a lot of that cycling, and it's going over at least a year. And so that's it's kind of a very specific construction, and it's more than you're likely going to be setting up at first. So I would not immediately jump in and say, oh yeah, you could just compost it down, it'll break down like la la la. You may well be able to. You could also mulch it and use it somewhere that that you actually kind of maybe want that allelopathic activity, like on paths or something. That could actually be really useful, right? Like eucalyptus chips, really oily, like pine, spruce fir, like those really oily aromatic chips can be really good for pathways because they limit growth, for a certain amount of time. But yeah, I would want to do some research before really and understand what the allelopathy is coming from. Sometimes it's from the roots, sometimes it's coming more from the leaves, and like the roots aren't really secreting anything. It's just like a compound that's more produced in the leaves. Sometimes it's bark, sometimes it's a little bit of all of them. But I would want to make sure that I knew where that effect was coming from before I said like, oh yeah, just go ahead and compost it. So, or go ahead and plant it even. Like I mean, I can see lots of there's articles out there on that, and I'm happy to do some digging into that, but I think it's a use with caution, and just understand why you're using that tree and not another choice, or what you're going to do if it happens to like really like the conditions that you've given it and get out of hand. Or
yeah, I think the main tree is on my neighbor's property, and then there's dozens of shoots kind of popping up, and then if I look a little further to the other neighbor's property, there's just a jungle of those. So I'm guessing they'll always be kind of around, but yeah, I just trying to find uses for it now that I know what it actually is.
At the very least, I had a friend who used hers for firewood, and it was fine.
There you go.
If you need something, sooner than later.
Yeah, I just want to see if there's any, because I know you've been talking about animals, if there's any toxicity to livestock.
Well, that guy's got goats free ranging, so I'm sure they've eat a little bit of it. I don't know if it's healthy for them, but
yeah. Yeah, systemic herbicides. Okay, that's enough of that. Thank you very much. I'm actually putting together some materials on like spray alternatives in the horse, the horse pasture groups that I'm in. It's just everybody's like, what do I spray this with? How do I spray this? I've got weeds. And I'm like, what's your soil type? What weeds do you have? Like, oh, you've actually got something that's really high in calcium and your hay is going to be high in potassium. So anyway, like all these things that you can like, oh, it's actually okay. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to do some reading a bit. Maybe I'll plug that into it at the next like pharmacologist episode or something. That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, anyway, that's my take on.
Thank you.
Heaven. Hi, Victoria. I am sorry I missed you not last week, but the last call.
No worries. I was running like very behind last week,
Okay.
and I kind of try to come from work and make it align, but that's okay. My questions last week were pretty manageable, so not a problem at all. Yeah. Have we delved into this week's assignment at all in the first 10 minutes? Okay.
We haven't really, but we can.
Yeah. I was just sort of curious. And actually it kind of stems off of our last discussion a little bit. So I had a talk with my client sort of about zone 1 last week. And one of the things and this is a recent development, but he really, really wants a deck. And like right now he's got sort of a concrete landing pad, and he would really like to level that up to the door, because right now it's like a step down. He'd like to level that up to the doorways and have a little bit of, and a small elevated deck. And I have never researched, sustainable ways of building decks in Southern California, but I was wondering if off the top of your head, if there's like, it doesn't seem like a particularly permaculture oriented.
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of partial because my husband has built some absolutely gorgeous decks.
Yeah.
He's done some really cool things with like, rounding the edges and like little walkways and stuff. Like it's kind of an art form for him. So I'm waiting to get our decks. I'm just like, I can't wait to have our decks built here. Yeah. The nice thing about them is that, because we get so much rain at once, it'll go through. Whereas with a concrete pad, it won't, it sheets off, right?
Right.
We kind of have a water catchment area underneath to a certain extent. Now, we kind of got a reality check and are having to do a little more learning than we had about like keeping moisture next to a foundation.
Right.
Which starts to sound sort of like, I don't know, I'm feeling like kind of silly, like it never crossed my mind, because knowing that concrete is quite porous, like we're actually having problems with the flooring that we had installed in December bubbling up. And it's not because we keep a lot of moisture around, but it really got us thinking of like, oh, are we holding too much moisture against the foundation? I don't think we are, but it's something that you probably want to do some research on. Getting a vapor barrier might be something that you'd need to consider. Okay. I would definitely talk to like a licensed contractor about it, just to know for sure, because you would not want to jeopardize your client's foundation.
Right.
Willy-nilly. But the other cool thing is that, if you took up that, and it's a sort of a fairly high ceiling on like time and capital and resources, but taking up that patio, busting it up as urbanite, and you can use that in construction. And the same thing, like Santa Paula, like so we drive through Santa Paula to go hiking periodically, and so Lane took me by his old house up there, which he sold like 15 years ago, and he had actually built an urbanite wall, but he had used a tile saw to cut the blocks.
Oh, cool.
And so instead of having which we've got lots of urbanite wall that he's built with like the cool knobbly kind of edge.
Chunky.
But where it's been cut, it looks like this almost like head cheese stone. Like it is beautiful. It's so cool looking. Yeah. And he's got there was like a nice flat, smooth surface, and then like the bumpy edge of the concrete was almost like a little overhang, and then like a kind of a recessed wall underneath that. And it's gorgeous. Like,
So when you say a tile saw, do you just mean like the kind of the same, like the masonry?
yeah, it looks like
Yeah.
it looks like a miter saw, and you hook a hose up to it, and yeah, just that's.
And they can make deep enough cuts to do that, to round the edges.
Yeah, I mean the concrete's like I think most of it's like 3 or 4 inches thick.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So we've definitely, over the years, we keep an eye out for when we're driving around and we see someone like tearing up a driveway or something, and it's got to be like manageable size blocks and thick enough, but like not too thin, not like crazy thick, that we can actually cut through.
Awesome. Okay.
Eitan, I just saw you raised your hand there. I see your raised hand.
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious, Victoria. What opportunities do you think there might be in the building of the deck? My mind first went to like another place where, depending on the height of the deck, more water can be stored. But maybe what are some other things that maybe come to mind of elements that your client is interested in, that you're interested in, that you're like, oh wait, there might be some hidden away real estate potentially that's available?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way of looking at it. And I think, thank you for that mindset shift, because I've just been thinking about all of the ground space we're going to lose, like all of the planting space. But I think, he's really only talking about, in terms of elevation, we're probably talking about like a foot. We're not talking about a lot of elevated space underneath the deck, at least. I think that there's some opportunity to do some like container planting around the edges of the deck. I think that, if we incorporate some benches and things like that, then we might be able to do some hideaway storage for some of because that is an issue on our property as well, is that because the garage has been converted into an additional dwelling unit, we've lost a lot of just our like tool storage and things like that. So, maybe incorporating that into the design a little bit. Might be able to, while we're doing it, find cool ways of camouflaging the thin tanks that we're going to use for the, it just because we're like, if we're building anyway. I guess my main concern about it is making sure that the materials we're using to actually build the deck are, sustainable and responsible. And I'm just not really, everyone around here uses redwood, and that's not really sure how sustainable a choice that is. So I guess that's kind of where my mind was going, is like what materials we can use that will make it,
Have you considered looking into like salvage wholesalers?
I mean, that would definitely help, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My
Another thing. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The deck at my house is, I don't know what they put, but I think it's just like plywood, so there's no slats in the middle for like rain to go through. So it's actually really good at collecting water. I mean, mine's pretty high and off my roof, but I get a lot of water off of it. I think it's just plywood, and then I'm guessing they just painted it over with like probably some sort of chemical lacquer or something. But
Interesting.
I don't know if I don't actually know what it is, but it doesn't like rot and doesn't leak through, and it's just like a second roof for more rainwater.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to think about also some, in terms of plantings, you can definitely do like arbors and other like vines, right, that sort of come up. So if you're losing that space in terms of planting, you can maybe, have that area covered with plants, and, so you can have the plants coming down instead of coming up, sort of around and down.
Yeah, and
level.
yeah, and since it's a nice low deck too, the other thing that we've talked about is sort of like building the deck around some beds too,
Ooh, yeah.
so that, because we're already going to be sort of building the deck around an existing lemon tree. So there's a lemon
Ooh,
tree that's already there. So the
cool.
lemon tree will kind of come up through the deck. And so we might like echo that, with like an herb bed, like the herb bed by the kitchen, being kind of connected to the deck, but kind of coming off of it. And then maybe like, room for a vine to come up through or something like that, especially since I do think we're thinking slatted. So as long as it's something that doesn't need, but that's the thing, even establishing regular irrigation, you just have to kind of problem solve for that a little bit.
Yeah, and then long term, I'm just thinking about,
Mhm.
especially if it's not that high off the ground, whatever you have growing, whether it's a lemon tree or some other things, they're going to shed over time, and then there's going to be an accumulation that's going to get in between those slats.
Yeah.
And just not even maintenance, like long-term maintenance, just
Mhm.
it's going to start to build up under there. And so
Yep.
how do you clean that if you that's something to think about.
Yeah, I don't. Ben does. Yeah.
One of the things that I think too to plan in there, and I've been sorry, Eitan, I really appreciate how you turn things to questions. You start with questions. I've been like, it's something that I really try to model, and then sometimes kind of my mouth runs off. But with stuff like that, with deck shed, having an area to like scooch it off to really easily makes it an easy cleaning system.
Cool. Yeah.
Did you guys have any plans yet for composting systems?
So and great question. That's actually our composting setup currently is under that lemon tree where he would like to deck off.
Okay.
So I'm thinking we might just move it off to the side and kind of do both of your points. Especially if he's going to be sweeping that with some regularity. If he can sort of sweep it right into a compost pile, that's going to make it a lot easier. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of integrating a compost system into that design too.
Have you looked into worm bed benches?
Worm benches? No, I have not.
Yeah, very cool. And especially because on your site, there's not going to be like gallons and gallons and gallons of compost. Yeah. And if you've got those leaves shedding, you would have plenty of dry material to be dropping in there. The other thing that we've done, which we don't actually end up using because we have so many composting spaces, but a friend of ours that we built one for uses theirs all the time. And we have a wooden deck walkway. And there's I think there's a half an inch. No, there's about an inch between the boards. Mm-hmm. And then basically you make sections that you can pull like a 3 or 4 foot section up. And there's holes dug, there's like a space dug underneath the walkway. And so you can drop your compost in there, cover it up, and then move along. So it's pretty cool. It's not rat proof. Yeah. Although it's not like they're in Morro Bay. So it's not like they don't have rats. They're not, and they're not like, they're very tidy people. Like they would not put up with a rat problem if their compost was causing a rat problem. But they've never said anything that it was an issue. It doesn't smell. They've got like kind of a bank of banana trees growing along the fence, and then like a 2 foot wide plant or kind of planting area, and then the walkway and the composting area is under the walkway. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I like that thought too. But I would look up, worm composting benches, because I think they're pretty slick. Yeah, I'm pulling up some images of it right now, and that's thinking about doing, and that kind of takes that storage bench to the next level, because we were thinking about doing storage benches all the way around the lemon, like the out perimeter of the lemon tree. And that, I think that would just kind of up the game
a notch. So that's great. Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, as long, I would make sure you have either plan for having at least two, or a way that you can rest one side while you're using the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Right.
but
Yeah, that's and one came up that is like the perfect shape and everything. So
oh, cool. There you go.
very neat. Okay, great. Thank you.
Can I ask a question about vermiculture? Because whenever I've tried it, I've only done it outside.
Okay.
And admittedly, I've used like the sort of the plastic stacking gizmos. And even when I've tried to keep it in the coolest part of my outdoor space, it's those 100-degree days, the 300-400-degree days that just, I can't keep up with it. And it's just, it decimates them. And so, I mean, at least the plastic one is, you can sort of move it around and you can move it to a cooler location. With a bench, would you need to just make sure that it's deep enough that the worms have a place to cool off?
Yeah, and giving them an airspace. So what I would do is design a bench or find a bench design that basically the wood is just a cover. Like if you get worms right next to the wood, you're going to lose your bench in no time. But having like at least a ½ inch or an inch airspace between the container the worms are in and the wood, and at least a ½ inch thick wood, like a decent cover, that's going to go a long ways towards cooling it down. And then just making sure that it stays moist enough that it never dries out. Having it go down to the ground below the deck is actually a really good idea, because the soils, as long as it's covered, is always going to stay more or less at the same temperature. So yeah, those plastic ones would be very hard to keep cool without some sort of like an air gap, like a shade or something around them.
So maybe rather than having the worm bins on top of the deck, building them down into the deck and building the deck out around them for a couple extra. Yeah. That's a neat idea. I mean, we also, that area, it'd be fairly easy to dig down in a little bit and even inset it into the ground, a foot or two.
Yeah. You could also do, I mean, how much compost do you think he would go through, or like that would be generated that would be going into them?
I mean, the garden already, the annual garden makes a good amount. We haven't gone through an entire season with strictly composting everything that's coming out of it, but I have confidence that if we had, if we had benches that were let's just say like 18 inches by 3 feet each, and then that went down another 18, another 2 feet. I would say we could easily fill one per season and have a seasonal rotation with them, likely.
Yeah, that's a good amount too.
And he's got a good amount of kitchen scrap too that he creates. We can just get him to use it.
Well, then once he gets into composting toilets, it's a whole other.
I think that's going to take some work. We're just getting into rain barrels, so like we just.
It's a gateway drug. Those rain barrels are gateway.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, it's like, I mean, Eitan and I were talking about this before I hit record, but like, there's just you're going to make some mistakes, or you're going to do some stuff that you're like, if we'd done that differently, so you try and predict as many things as you can. You definitely work at least with like the volume you've got plus 10 or 20%.
Yeah.
You know, because hopefully, you know, you're going to plant all this stuff, you're going to be generating more. But you can also start thinking about like having, you know, just have the worm system for like the really intense scraps that you want to keep away from rats. So like the kitchen stuff, you know, fruit drop, that sort of thing. And then, you know, if you can build in like a banana circle somewhere that you can bury prunings and clippings and leaves and all the other stuff, you know, all the extra stuff, then that's really, really useful. And it also makes a great place to dump water when, you know, if we ever get another year like we got this year where there's excess water, right?
Yeah.
Having a place to drain that into.
I've never grown bananas in our climate. Do they, I mean, how much of a water guzzler are they? Like
We don't irrigate. We
okay.
don't irrigate at all. And they
Okay.
do the cool thing about them is that they do really well with water, but then they're quite drought tolerant.
Okay, great.
And they store a lot of water. You know,
Yeah.
like their stem is basically like this whole water storage column. It's really cool.
Awesome.
They do all right. You know, we don't get a ton of production, but we get enough, and they're, you know, the leaves are really nice. The leaves like make really nice compost.
Great.
So they break down pretty easily. So
Awesome. Yeah, I'll look into
Yeah.
that.
okay. How are you doing, Damien? Haven't seen you before.
Hello, I'm doing good. Thank you so much. I actually stopped by last week, but I was late and I assumed nobody showed up and
Oh shoot. Okay.
we're not there. I was like a minute late. So, yeah. I'm just thinking about when when it comes to the course. I feel like I lost a few points, and I wasn't even thinking about it, the grades, because I'm not a great person. Like, I don't even look at my grades at all, but I just read the email. It says like we have to have at least 80 to 100 to end the certificate. So I'm wondering where I am or what I need to improve in order to get my certificate.
You know, honestly, Damien, I'm just gonna tell you straight up, and knowing your project, knowing the work that you've been doing, please do not worry about it.
Okay.
Please, because I know you've been like doing all the pieces, like as long as you have the assignments completed.
Yeah, I'm behind like 2 chapters now, but I will catch up.
Okay, yeah, make sure to get caught up as quickly as you can. And then if you can go back, find any areas. I don't multitask well, my apologies. But yeah, find any areas like where you did, you know, particularly like you felt like, you know, if there's anything that you can like, oh, I could probably pick up a few marks here, or like, oh, I want to go back and redo that, or like there's a big gap between like what the maximum points were and what you got. You know, if there's anything like that, you know, go back and pick those up, and then let me know, send me an email and let me know that you've done that. Here.
Yeah, I think I have some, like a few chapters. You gave me some advice and I need to go back and redo things.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just if you can go back and just apply that advice however you can, but I had one student, so this is you guys are my 4th cohort. I had one student in the last or the one before that who had submitted, I think we were about the same point, we were on like lesson 8 or 9, and he had submitted up to lesson 7. But there were so many gaps that I was like, I can't in good faith say that you actually like are doing, like, it was very obvious that it was like, just like, oh, I'm just gonna add that, like, it was really the bare minimum. And I know from your project, when I've gone through it, I'm like, I know you're doing well more than the bare minimum. And I just would not, please don't worry about the grades.
Okay.
Like,
Thank
because yeah, I mean, I don't mark with that 80 to 100% in mind, like I never would anyway, because of course that would be, you know, I don't feel like that would have to be ethical, but you're doing the work. And as long as you're completing those assignments, I'm going to make some remarks if there's anything that's like really missing. So go back and like fill those in where you can, but just make sure to get those assignments in. And I just don't worry about it.
Okay,
So,
thank you so much.
Yeah, it's good to check in, but please don't worry about it. So
Thank you.
yeah, and I usually tell students, I think I did send out an email at that midterm break, like it's different for every cohort, right? Like, but at the midterm break, you know, you really need to start catching up, or this needs to like be brought up to a higher standard in order to make, you know, to actually earn your certificate, because like, I can't in good faith let you guys out into the world and say like, oh, here's your certificate. Like, you know, I think you'll improve enough with practice. You know, like it's my job to make sure that you've like completed those elements. It's also a learning, it's a learning exercise, right?
Yeah.
So, I try to catch that, weeks ago. So if you haven't heard from me to this point, be like, okay, you got to like shore this up a bit or you're not going to make it. And so far I've only had to tell one student that I'm like, if you don't bring this up to a standard, I can't actually give you a certificate. And I didn't end up, because I was just like, you haven't completed the course. You didn't put the work in, it's not fair to everybody that did put that time in. And there's no judgment about like, some people just can't, they've got a family and full-time work or like something, health issue, whatever. But yeah, you would have heard from me by now if I was concerned.
Okay.
So I'm not concerned. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
In terms of the final assignment 10, is there like a week of leeway for the final assignment in terms of like, I know our peer review is due the following week, or do you really need those, since it's the last week, do you really need those to be right on time so that you can get the grading done before the certificate program ends?
No, I generally run it pretty much like I run every week. Like it definitely helps if you have it in the Monday that it's due.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me see.
I'm just looking at, I'm kind of looking ahead a little bit. And since that concept plan is so detailed, I'm just wondering if it might take a little longer than the normal 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it's also a good time to like, even starting now to go back through and kind of fix or amend anything that you want to.
Right.
So the next course doesn't start till June 26th. So there's no there's not usually an overlap there anyway. You're good. I want to check my calendar. Just to make sure I don't, because I need to plan it in terms of what I've got available for grading week. Oh, wait. Okay, so I'm just going to say, if you don't get it in, sorry, I'm on Google Calendar and it's just like, it just twitches all over the place when you get to the end of the month. What's your official end date? Yeah, so if you don't get it in on that Monday, actually that week is relatively clear. I was looking at next week, like the week for the next assignment is really, really packed.
Okay.
So then it would be hard for me to be like, yeah, go ahead, send it whenever you. Definitely, I would need it by like end of day Wednesday would be good.
Okay.
Then, so I will not have that Saturday to work the week before. I'm sorry. I'm kind of talking this through in my head.
No, you're fine. Thank you. And I want to make sure,
Um,
you know, I'm being respectful of your time. I just also,
Thanks. Well, and I want to make sure that I can, like, you know, if you can have it, I would say if you can have it the 5th of 6th, that would definitely be ideal, because I will have the Monday and the Wednesday to work. And possibly the Thursday.
okay. So,
I
sorry.
mean, the catch may be that you won't get video feedback on it. I'll just say that. I can mark late at night. I can mark early in the morning. I just can't. I can only record video feedback when I don't have a 4-year-old running around demanding my attention. I'm sure you can relate. And yeah, our
So-
babysitter has been out of commission, and my husband just sprained his thumb on his right hand, so he's been sort of like, it's been hard. It's harder for him to take on childcare for the next couple of weeks. But yeah, just try, if you can try and get it in by the end of day on Wednesday.
And by Wednesday, you mean Wednesday, June 7th? Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm gonna try my best to get it in by that Monday, but having those couple of days just as a mental
Yeah,
fallback.
for sure.
Yes, thank you.
I had maybe one more question. I recently, the university in the town I live in was giving away free trees, and I kind of went at the end of the day, and they gave me, I have like over 100 probably, like a lot of them like little seedlings.
Well done. Okay.
It's an awesome haul, but I only can get up to the property like once a week max is what I'm averaging right now. And I don't want to, I'll probably, try and plant 10 of them at least, or, something, but I don't want to plant a bunch of trees and then them all die.
Yeah.
Would you because it gets like 100 degrees multiple days. So two questions. One, do you know a system? Like I'm thinking Oyas is the thing I can think of, but I don't know how well that works for establishing new trees. But is there a way that of that besides like a deep mulch that would be a good strategy if I'm there once a week, but again, it gets 100 degrees. So I don't know if that's even.
What are they in?
Right now they're in just plastic containers.
Like black plastic pots?
Yeah, typical.
Yeah, so definitely, mulch them hard. And like whatever you can't plant into, like, if you can get, I mean, probably what would be ideal would be is if you get a load of topsoil, plant them into that and then mulch over that, because then the roots have got somewhere to go.
Just put it right over the hard ground.
Yeah, do you have an idea? Well, you could do it over the ground, or you could do it over the tarp. If you put it over a tarp, you'll have more water retention there. Is there any water in the pond right now?
Yep.
You could try utilizing that. You could put them,
I guess I should say, I can kind of keep them at my current house. I live on a half acre, so I can kind of jerry rig a nursery together, but I also want to get some in the ground just to actually have trees there.
Yeah,
but I don't know what size they would like. I have one pine that's maybe like 3 feet tall, so that one might do a little better, but a lot of the oak seedlings are 1-inch seedlings, so I just
gotcha. Yeah, okay, so I keep the little babies close to you because they're babies.
Yeah.
Look after them. Even Mark Shepard, who's like, oh, it's done, it's done sheer total utter neglect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's almost a quote from him. He's like, well, yeah, you can't just plant out a bunch of babies and then walk away, abandon them. It's like, well, that's what you're saying. That's what sheer total utter neglect is. Yeah. But yeah, the ones you can get in the ground, water them while you're there. And then mulch. If you've got Oyas to put in, that would certainly not going to hurt. I mean, you could do the wine bottle jammed in a ground, fill up a wine bottle and jam it in. It's not going to last the whole week.
Well, the majority of the Oyas I have are those little wine bottle size ones. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're like, like that big, and you just stick a wine bottle in them, and then they.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Last for like 3-4 days in our climate.
Yeah, so it's not nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll help them get established. I guess I would prioritize anything that you want to plant around or near the pond, so they've got, if you can get them some water, some access to that water.
Or would you, I mean, like I have the option, would you wait till maybe after summer and plant them when it's going to be cooler and the rains will come?
Because it's already heating up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm sitting here and it's like, it is completely overcast. It's like 60 degrees, 60, 65 degrees or something down here. It's like, yeah, throwback. Can you set up any kind of a shade structure for them?
Yeah, probably.
Yep. Yeah, some shade wouldn't hurt just to get them through. It's nice. They're always going to do better in the ground than they are in a pot.
Yeah.
So the sooner you can get them out of the pot and get them established in the ground, you're just going to have to, kind of nurse them through the hot season until they get.
I mean, you typically would water daily in the hot season?
No, I would actually water really well, like every few days. Maybe you could get by with once a week, but like even wait till they're showing a little bit of signs of water stress. Because if you water shallowly, if you water like every single day, they're going to get used to it and all those roots are going to stay up at the top. Whereas if you water them less often, so yeah, more like a week, water them really well, that water is going to like percolate down. Now, what was your soil like? Did you have fairly sandy?
Yeah, sandy,
Yeah. Okay.
sandy loamy.
Yeah, so make sure you get some like compost and like some organic material in there to make sure, like give them something to hold on to and something to hold on to the water. But if you water them more deeply, that water is going to travel down and those roots are going to follow it. And that's where you want them. You want them to go deep, especially in a sandy soil situation.
Would it be probably helpful to put one of those like tubes 3 feet down that you're kind of watering? I don't know if you've seen those. It's like a landscape 3-inch pipe that goes down a little bit. And so you water the top, but then you can take the cap off, water directly down. So then you can throw a gallon.
It sure wouldn't hurt if you've got the, the time and the resources to do that. It definitely wouldn't hurt. For sure.
Mark, what I would do is because it sounds like they're native. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. I mean, I think once a week would probably be okay, I would guess. And it sounds like your soil is fast enough draining that you don't need to, it will get pretty far down depending on how many gallons of water you want to do. And you can actually be fairly accurate with how much watering each of these trees are getting. You can get like a large plastic container, either like a pot or even like a 5
gallon
thing, and then you can stick, you can poke it with some tubing and then have the tubing come out on the side, so you can fill up the whole thing like 5 gallons and then have these little tubes running. This is the once a week when you go, right? Because if you're, let's say you put in 20 trees, you're not going to want to stand there, and keep going. Did I give enough? And then you move on. If you have a couple of these things, we just fill it up, and that they're getting 5 gallons, and that it's going to drain well enough. You make sure that the perimeter is set. That pretty much ensures that you're, watering deeply enough. I think once a week. Correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, but especially if you start sooner rather than later. If you wait until that. Middle of June or, beginning of July, it's going to be really hot and they're going to have a harder time than right now. If it was like middle of the summer, I might say wait, but I think you might have a window now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I was definitely going to at least try 10 plants. Since
do you know where all of them are going to go? That's 100.
No, that's
100 trees. That's not a small undertaking. Yeah,
certainly an issue.
No.
So a lot of the oak ones, though, I was going to replant into 5 gallons and wait for them to grow up a little bit. So that's the majority of them. There's probably like 50 seedlings. But there's probably like 20 3-foot tall pines or something that,
Yeah. What kind of oaks did they give you?
it was,
Is it Endelman?
no, it starts with an A.
Pasadena oak?
Yeah, they're on the containers, but because there
Okay,
was
there's a lot.
like 10 different varieties. So there's a,
Wow, cool.
it was pretty
That's
crazy.
awesome.
Yeah, it was,
That's
it was
fun.
awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, I lucked out on that one. And I do it every year.
For
So now
you.
I know, like, just
That's
roll
great.
at the end of the day. And
I can't wait to see it in 50 years.
yeah,
Yeah.
my son's gonna love it.
Did you get any, is it all trees or did you get shrubs or anything? Or?
They only had trees. It was holly oak, but
Okay.
holly oak.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and Aleppo pine.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And what organization was doing this, Mark?
It was just through University of Redlands, I think.
Oh.
And then I think just a nursery donated them. And
Very cool. Very
Mhm. It's supposed to be 2 trees per household. And then that's it. They just had a bunch left, and
Yeah.
take whatever you want. We don't.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, well, that's nice.
For 49 of my friends, you said.
Right?
Yeah.
If anyone's in the Inland Empire, you can come grab a couple holly oaks from.
Oh my God. I wish we had the land for it. That's
Yeah, that's going to be the key, is kind of designing where they all go, because I can't really keep track of them right now, especially if I'm hand watering most of them. Like, that'll be
yeah.
difficult.
I wish we will live in closer so we can help each other.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
the big day of
Yeah, we
digging.
sure wish we could help you, Mark. Well, you know, there's another thing is that, I mean, that's a lot of trees. You could grow them up a while, like really baby them, put them into like bigger, nicer pots and sell some.
Hmm.
You know? I mean, if you wanted to,
That's true,
it's
yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of trees and they're better off going in the ground somewhere
Mm.
than, you know, if it gets overwhelming or so. If you even wanted to start a nursery, there you go.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I'm doing, building up there, would be some sort of a nursery, because
Yeah.
money wise, I'll have to grow most of the plants myself, I think, for 10 acres and nothing growing.
Right. Right.
I just set up a system with a micro sprinklers and a timer and a ball for what's it called? Irrigation bowl. And it just came out like every 30 minutes for 15 seconds, and just keep moist my plants. And actually I'm trying to propagate different plants, because plants are really expensive. So I use getting cuttings from the neighborhood. And
That's in your nursery?
Yeah, some of them are taken and some of them are not, but I just keep it there because I'm very busy all the times and I don't have time to water. And I used to keep a lot of plants, and whenever I come, they were dead. And now I don't have to worry. They're getting some humidity in there. And it's not even that much water. It's really just a little mist for 15 seconds every 30 minutes. And the timer is only coming out during the day. So at night it's off, not even getting out.
And that's just to like a hose nozzle, or to a sprinkler system you have set up, or?
Have you seen those little the cooling? They sometimes put them at the top of you know, decks or things like that. Those work really well. I use them for propagation, not so much nursery plants, but
is there, should I assume, do I try and give them a little airspace? Like, if I bunch them all up, will that cause problems, or I don't know, like in nurseries I've seen it kind of both ways.
Oh, and yeah, you're putting in a nursery situation? I don't know. I've always seen them, like, even like when I was in Africa and stuff, they would just have like the little plastic tubes or like toilet paper tubes, and they're just all cheek by jowl. I mean, because that keeps some moisture in too. So,
yeah, easier to water.
Yeah, just keep an eye on the roots and make sure they don't get too hot-bound, and because that's always what makes it harder to transplant older, bigger trees, is that they've gotten root bound or the roots are starting to rot, or so.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome. Nice to see y'all.
Yep.
You're
Good to
so
see you.
close.
Thanks for the All
Cool.
right.
All right. Have a great day. Have a good week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.